Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Sword and Sandal Cinema, I am proud to be speaking with Michelle Brittany. Greetings and welcome, Michelle. How are you?
Oh, greetings, Hercules. I'm doing very well. Anxious to be here and talk about one of my favorite subjects, which are cats in ancient Egypt. Yes, how are you doing?
Doing great. My life is branching off in some new directions and some old directions. So again, life is an adventure. It's very short. We never know how long it's going to be. So onwards.
And it's lovely to have all the options that you have coming up. So it'll be exciting for me to hear, as well as I'm sure your listeners to hear about all the activities that are coming up in the weeks and months to come. So
Thank you.
well, we talked about on Scholars from the Edge of Time. I know that Nick and I have mentioned several times that we have been working on respective essays regarding cats in cinema, and kind of using that as a jumping off point to actually look at cats in different mythologies. So obviously my interest lies in ancient Egypt, and my movie that I used to jump off my essay was actually Stephen Sumner's 1999 The Mummy.
Mhm.
That starred Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, Arnold Vosloo. We're going to have a cat view here in a second. I'll just push him along real quickly. That came out, let's say I said in 1999. And so I was using that as kind of my jumping off point. But it was kind of tough at the same time because there's like 3 scenes of a cat in the movie. And in 2 of the times, it's where the cat scares the mummy. And so we have one scene early on when the mummy is still, very much bones and little bits of skin. And he sees the white cat, and he becomes very scared, and he exits the room very quickly. And then, he regenerates a little bit more because, he's going through and he's recollecting various artifacts, the canopic jars, and he's killing people as he goes that have these jars. And so he sees the cat again a second time. And again, he is very fearful. He basically spins, becomes this whirlwind of sand, and exits again. And of course, Brendan Fraser, I think it's almost in the very next scene. Brendan Fraser and Party are back at the Egyptian Museum, and they're talking about, oh my gosh, this mummy, he's out and about. What are we going to do? And it's kind of funny because Brendan Fraser's character, Rick O'Connell, he says, question, why doesn't he like cats? And to which the curator says, responds and says, well, cats are the guardians of the underworld. He will fear them until he's fully regenerated, and then he will fear nothing. And I thought about that because cats really aren't truly a guardian of the underworld. I mean, I think they can kind of be construed if you kind of think double negative might make a positive,
Mhm.
so that you might have a case where you could say, well, they represent motherhood, or they represent regeneration. And, you might be able to say that there might be some truth. But I also thought that the question was a lot more complex, and really steeped more into a lot of different kind of cat history, as well as the mythology that grew around the domestication of cats. And so one of the books that I used as a reference, and I just wanted to show it, and unfortunately, I think it's going to look backwards, but it is The Cat in Ancient Egypt by Jarmir Malik.
No,
And
it's perfect. The
oh,
writing can be,
excellent, excellent. Glad that it is. It is a slightly older book, but it is published by the British Museum Press, and it was an excellent reference for my research. I did use other books, but that was, I would say, is a great entry point for anybody that's interested in learning more about cats and the mythology. And like I said a moment ago, there's a lot of complexity around the cat and its representation and its mythology related to ancient Egypt. And you know, one aspect, there's actually several, and I'll just kind of walk through them. But one is domestication. So you know, as we probably are quite aware, ancient Egypt is one of the oldest civilizations out there. And at the time that the ancient Egyptian civilization was developing, it kind of developed from a nomadic type of peoples. They settled along the Nile, and over a period of time, cats became a part of their home and a part of their household. Um, but it was a very long history for the domestication. If we look at some of the earliest presence of cats, like within the tombs, which is really most of the record that we have for the, you know, old kingdom, when we're talking about like 3000 BC, you know, right around that period of time, we don't have a lot of written records. So we have to kind of look at, well, what were the tombs telling us? And a lot of the early tombs, it was the person kind of in a maybe a fetal position, and they might have had one or two items buried with them. But it was right around 4000 BCE that there was a tomb where a cat was laid next to the feet of the owner. Now, unfortunately, we can't derive whether that cat was domesticated, whether it was a favored animal, or maybe the man, God forbid, killed the animal and it was a prized possession, or you know, we have no way of knowing. But we can say that over the years, we can determine that cats did become part of the family and became part of ancient Egyptian civilization. And part of the way that we are able to do that is actually through the language, like the hieroglyphs. One of the symbols in the hieroglyphs is a cat. And that kind of became one of the early representations of cats in their art. And that's how we are able to kind of learn a bit more about the ancient Egyptians, is through hieroglyphs, obviously, because that was their language, but then also through tomb art. So we start seeing these cats portrayed, or, you know, in tombs and portrayed in the language right around, I'm going to say, when we get kind of in the 4th dynasty, when we have like the coffin texts and we have the various tombs, we start seeing the cat symbol portrayed in their language. And we are able to see these cats there and present, but we're not able to really determine where they kind of fit within the family at that time. But we do, over time, begin to start seeing, particularly in the tomb art, scenes. You know, it moves away from not just, you know, columns and columns of hieroglyphs. We start seeing scenes. And some of the scenes that we are privy to that have been found by archaeologists over the last 200 plus years are scenes of, person out on a hunt, and you can see a cat in the marshes, like
Mm,
the cat is, playing in the marshes or going into the marshes to go after the ducks and the fowl. And, you see, the fowl rising out of the reeds and the papyrus, and the hunter is there. So you see that cat as maybe, representing an early representation of the cat as part of the household. Maybe the cat is starting to become domesticated, but we're not sure, because maybe the cat just happened to be there. But it's more of the fact that we start seeing scenes of domestic life. We see, the woman sitting in her chair, for instance, and there might be a cat under her chair, or there might be a cat nearby, with some of the other animals and fowls and things like that. So you start to get a sense that cats are there, they're present. It seems that they are probably becoming, obviously not as wild. They may not be completely domesticated, but they are becoming more part of ancient Egyptian society. Because they have importance in the art and in the language. So it seems natural that that might be stemming from their importance within daily life. We also find in the hieroglyphs and in the tomb art this sense of religious journey. And so we have cats become kind of part of that. So I mentioned earlier about the coffin texts, the subsequent text from that becomes I'm sorry, I think it's pyramid, and then it's the coffin text, and then of course we travel to the Book of the Dead. And in those texts, there are snippets of stories of cats involved in the person's journey into the afterlife. And so, we start seeing this elevation of cats from being within the household, and now they're becoming part of the language of religion and their involvement in that religion. And the male cats seem to be associated with Ra and his journey in the underworld at night. Like the cat would be a protector. The cat wielded a knife, or maybe it was a representation of his nails or a nail. And the cat would kill the Apos or Apophis, basically the snake god. And so you get that kind of representation, but there really wasn't a representation of the cat as being a guardian of the underworld as much as a guardian of Ra as he traveled through the underworld. Along with the fact that we're seeing cats now becoming part of the religious ideology, well, what do cats represent? Well, obviously they represent some sort of protection, because we have the male cat associated with Ra. But we also find that in the pyramid texts, which are from the Old Kingdom, so we're talking about 2500 BCE, that there is a cat-like goddess who appears in those texts as a nurse and as a mother to the pharaoh. And there's been scholarship around that might have been a deity named Mahdet, which is which was more of a lioness, but they do believe that maybe that lioness eventually evolved into the cat goddess Basset. But in both cases, the animal deity appears as a feline, and like the male cat as a protector of Ra, she's associated with Ra as the daughter. And so, she's both protective, but then they also have the dangerous attribute of, being willing to protect Ra. And so with this concept is perpetuated in the coffin text, which is part of the Middle Kingdom, which is now we're getting closer to the Book of the Dead. Like, many people will likely be familiar with Ani. He's probably got the most famous Book of the Dead that probably has the most complete illustrations. It's one that Professor Budge cut up and then took back to England. And but it is a very good representation of the Book of the Dead. And so, from the from the pyramid text to the coffin text to the Book of the Dead, this story is kind of perpetuated with this cat as a protector and associated with Ra. So where does that lead to next? Because now we have the cat as a deity. But what's interesting is that, and I didn't know this, but Basset was not really, I'm going to air quote, but an original god or goddess of the pantheon of ancient Egypt. Her rise to kind of that level came much later. She becomes more of a pantheon deity in the late period of ancient Egyptian history. So now we're talking like around 1000 BCE to around 600 BCE. And not only does she gain an elevation to that pantheon, that's on the heels of her becoming popular in a region. And so Bubastis, which is a location in the delta of Egypt, and it was known for a lot of trade. She became kind of their patron goddess, and her aura, her deity-like qualities became more associated with motherhood. And the kings and the leaders of that area really worked to promote her as a goddess. And that's how she became a goddess along the pantheon of Ra and Osiris and Isis and others. So with that, that kind of elevation to what I would say cult status, she also, there's a sense of commodification, because before that, we do have early representations of cat statues, but it really becomes a commodified system, because now people are going to Bubastis to take their cat that they want to have mummified. They want to honor that cat. I showed at the beginning, this cat, which is a representation of, one of the most famous cats. It's in the British Museum, with that very stoic pose. And, she becomes associated with motherhood, fertility, the trades, being able to have a bounty. I think that all really kind of ties together, along with her rise in deity, cult status, the commodification of statues and so forth. Festivals, of course, you got to have your festivals too, right? So, they start having various festivals associated with Basset. And some of these festivals were actually described by Herodotus, who is noted for, he discusses the temple there, talks about their cult status, he talks about all the mummified cats, but he also talks about the festival, and he talks about how much wine was consumed at these, but obviously, they the cat goddess made an impression on him through his travels, and it was worthy to speak of and write about in his histories. The other thing is that scholarships mentions that in later times the goddess is frequently found as a symbol as motherhood, who is believed to protect women during pregnancy. Also, Beset is often equated in the Greek mythology with their own goddess Artemis.
Yes.
Yep. So let's see. I have just a few minutes, but I to kind of sum up, I feel like it took a few millenniums, but that the wildcat did over time become domesticated as the ancient Egyptians settled, along the Nile, and they became more of an agrarian society. They also become more involved in the, obviously they become part of the hieroglyph, their language, and they become a part of their tomb art, which establishes cats not only in art, but it's as a reflection of their involvement in Egyptian everyday life. Now, if we go back to the movie real quick, which was what really started all this, it's really hard to say that the white cat is really a guardian of the underworld, but we also see that Beset is kind of a complex goddess. She's had a very diverse trajectory into the pantheon of the Egyptian gods. And so one of the things that I did is that I did go to a literary source, because there was a novel written on the movie. So, and I don't know if the movie was done first and then the novelization came after. I think that may have been the case. But the author is Max Allan Collins, and he gave, we don't see it in the movie, but in the book, it opens up that Imhotep is going out into the desert with his lover's body, and along with him are all of his priests that are with him, and they are actually carrying white cats. And they're described as white as the purest sand, strange cats with eyes that glowed like hot coals in darkness, their bodies so limber they might have been boneless. And so I really kind of, I thought about that passage and thought that, the cats, might have actually been witness to the fact that Imhotep, we only see in the movie that he does a spell that he's trying to bring her back to life. But in the book, he actually does two spells. The first spell, he actually has to, and he's, being watched, and he has to basically condemn his lover's soul. So the second, that's the first spell, that's the one we don't see. But in the second spell, which was filmed, is where he's trying to, bring her back to life. So the cats were witness to that first spell. And I kind of hypothesized that maybe in his distant memory, that maybe the white cat actually represented something very tragic and very horrible for him. And I don't know. It's kind of, it's all fiction, at the end of the day, and it was meant to entertain, but you just don't know if maybe that might have been just a little bit why he was afraid of the white cat in the mummy. And I do want to say that the other source for the mummy, the 1999 version, was, of course, the 1932, directed by Karl Freund, and starred Boris Karloff, as well as Zita Johann. And in that, it is kind of interesting that even though Stephen Sumner does kind of take very similar narrative beats from that movie into his own, he did switch the cat up. So this is another kind of interesting, like, something to think about. But in the original 1932 film, the white cat was actually I'm going to say familiar without a better word for it, to Ardith Bey, who is the mummy. That's Boris Karloff. And what's her name? Helen Grosvenor, who is also the princess, his lover in a past life. She has a beautiful Alsatian dog. And, the scene is she goes to his home, and they both look in the pool of reflection, and she doesn't know what happens to her dog. And all we hear later in a flash, or not in a flashback, but as she's talking about it, all she knows is that the dog, and there's a white cat. And then all we can kind of speculate is maybe the dog died from fright. And so just kind of interesting how the cat changed and evolved in its portrayal in the two movies. And that is my journey into cat mythology and cat cinema. And again, I hope that people might take a look at The Cat in Ancient Egypt as kind of a further reading. Obviously, there's lots of books out there, but I would say that's a really nice book. It's very focused in on cats in ancient Egypt.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Have you ever taught Egyptian mythology or Egyptian history or Egyptian mysticism? Would you like to?
Yeah, down the road, sure.
'Cause we're headed down that road. That's one of the steps. I'm working with it. I'm working on it with Michael Waterman or Seth Kemet. So we're setting it up so that people who have areas of expertise can share their expertise and hold classrooms, and then people would pay to take the classrooms and so on. So you are an excellent teacher, and I will definitely keep you in mind and keep you in the loop as that part of the branches moves forward as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to be part of that and to help to encourage people to want to learn more. And it's, pop culture is really a great stepping stone. It is a lot of entertainment, but it can give you a stepping point to want to look into understanding better. Is that statement really true?
Right.
Look at my journey from that one statement, one little piece of dialogue in a movie, and what it took, the journey it took me on.
And things like I remember listening to or reading something when I was more heavily focused on Norse mythology, and Thor's winged helmet, which came to him via Marvel Comics, had already started to work its way into the stories that were told of Thor, and like his gloves and his belt. Now he had the winged helmet, and that wasn't there before Jack Kirby happened to draw it for him, and became so much a part of his modern pop cultural mythology that it seeped into the larger mythology. And I read every book I can find on Hercules. And I see that some of the stories that are being related are the really ancient and obscure tales, or adaptations of ancient and obscure tales. But there's a lot of pop cultural references smattered among this new retelling. So it's awesome. Greetings. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, Hercules. Good to see you, sir.
Good to
Well,
see you too.
just to finish up and pass the torch over to my colleague, Nicholas, I do want to say that, passing the torch, that it'll be interesting to have a conversation down the road about Incantu, the Living Mummy, because just with the cursory research that I've done, he also has some artifacts from ancient Egypt that are both fictional and true. So I think that would make a really fascinating episode down the road.
I think so too. And one last thing I want to share before the guard shifts and changes is today during our errands travel, we found that the Batman figure of King Tut, you know, those Target figures, they
Yes.
came out with King Tut. So we picked one up and my wife put it in her universal mummy display. She has the figure of the mummy. She has some mummy cases and columns and she has a whole thing. So now he's in there too.
Oh, excellent. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, on that note, Nicholas, it's over to you to talk about cats in your arena of
All right.
expertise.
Just to make sure, you talked about cats and Mummy 99, right? For Simon's book?
Yes, I did.
Sweet. Okay, we keep the theme going.
We do.
Hello, Hercules. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. How are you, Nick?
Oh, I'm all right. It's Tuesday already. I mean, the 3-day weekend went by so quick. I
Yes,
had
it did.
so much to do and I didn't do enough of it.
I'm in the same boat. So
Turn you up a little. Okay, so like Michelle, I have an essay that's been submitted to a book on cats in cinema. And knowing me with the sword and sandal type stuff, I did it on peplum cats. And so I have a pretty short form essay. So about cats, and I specifically narrowed it to Italian sword and sandal cinema during its golden era, you know, late 50s, early 60s. So alas, not diving too much into neo-peplum with this one, and not really diving into toga and sandal films either, you know, because there's cats in those films. They're usually like, hi, I'm a powerful pharaoh sitting on my throne and there's a cat there. You know, they're more, you know, eye candy type things, you know, set decorations. So y'all will be kind of the first to hear some of the notes and stuff from this essay.
awesome.
So I'm going to start by reading a quote from Tales of the Greek Heroes.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Quote, realizing that no weapon could kill it, Hercules rushed into the cave with his cloak wrapped round one arm and seized the lion round the neck with the other. Then they rolled and wrestled on the ground over and over, the lion's struggles growing ever weaker and weaker until at last it lay dead, throttled by the mighty arm about its neck, end quote. And so that is basically Hercules' first labor given to him by King Eurystheus to slay the Nemean lion, which was basically this invulnerable lion. So, you know, you try to ping, 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 stab it. And of course, its fur go pew, pew, pew. So he had to unfortunately choke it. But that's, you know, it's a very legendary story related to Hercules. I mean, we see it in a lot of films, and that's kind of what I'm going to focus on. Is that quote I just read is basically recreated in a lot of strongman peplum, almost verbatim. I mean, the situation may be different, but all those situations, they basically accomplish two things. One, it recreates and solidifies the Nemean lion myth, tongue twister there. And two, it creates a sword and sandal trope, and it's one that helps define the strongman character. It helps, you know, showcase that, you know, he's a strong man. Well, how strong is he? Well, he can kill a lion. So, you know, that's a way for a strong man to show his prowessness. So there's two areas that a strong man character, and when I say strong man, of course, they're all interchangeable. You know, there's Hercules, Ursus, Machista, Goliath, you know, they're all, for purposes of this, they're all kind of one and the same. They're all incarnations of Hercules or reiterations of Hercules. And so the strongman character, they're going to encounter a lion or a cat or a tiger or a panther. It doesn't matter what feline it is. They're all kind of, again, they stand in for the lion, either in the wild or in a captive scenario, be it a prison or an arena of sorts where it's more on spectacle. So first, you know, the strongman character, they have a sense of wanderlust. They roam different lands in different times. different climates, jungles and deserts. So here's a list of some of these movies that the strongman character encounters a lion, tiger, panther, whatever in the wild. 1958 Hercules, Machista and King Solomon's Mines, Solomon and the Seven Miracles of the World, Atlas in the Land of the Cyclops, Son of Samson, Hercules, Samson, and Ulysses. So going through these, and Hercules, the original one with Steve Reeves, the one that kickstarted all of this, Hercules, he's off to slay the lion because the lion was like killing people in the town that he was in. And going with him is Prince Iphitus, who's really kind of a jerk. He's very jealous of Hercules. And the lion actually attacks and kills the prince. But Hercules, even though he's like, hey, this guy's a jerk and he's been a jerk to me and he's totally just threatened to kill me, I am the bigger man. I will, try and save him and stop the lion. I mean, he does stop the lion, but the prince still succumbs to his wounds. But that all happens outside the city, near some caves and whatnot. In Machista in King Solomon's Mines, that one takes place in the African wilderness, and some refugees from a city that just got conquered, they're out there in the forest, and one's a mom, one's a kid. They're not related, I don't remember. But the kid takes off chasing after little baby lions, but a big lion comes and is menacing the mom character. But Machista, who just happens to be walking through, a lot of these are just the character happens to be walking through, jumps in and wrestles the lion to save the fainted woman. In Samson and the Seven Miracles of the World, this one has a lot of political intrigue in it. Basically, the Great Khan is now ruling over China. He's not really supposed to be like the heir is supposed to, but the Khan is like, we got to get rid of that kid. Let's take him on a hunting trip and we'll pretend a lion kills him and then I will have the throne. And so that's what happens is they take this kid on a hunting trip and these treacherous soldiers throw him in a pit with a lion. Actually, it's a tiger pit. Sorry, I'm going through my notes. Big cat. All these are big cats. So the kid's at the bottom, help, help, help. And who happens to be passing? But Machista, this time by Gordon Scott. He's like, I will save you. So he leaps into the pit and chokes the tiger into submission. But this one shows the tiger still breathing afterwards. So I don't think either he killed the tiger or the tiger's still alive. It could go either way. What I mean by that is because these are low budget films. And so sometimes I think they meant to I slayed the beast, but the lion's is trained us to, sit there. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The Machista hops in and saves the kid from the tiger in the pit because he just happens to be walking by. All right, Atlas in the Land of Cyclops. This one, Queen Capys has a curse placed on her, and she needs to lift this curse, and so she needs to kill the bloodline of Ulysses. And so there's basically a baby who's a descendant of Ulysses, and they're like, get this baby to Machista, who is Gordon Mitchell this time, and he will save the kid and protect him. And so this guy takes Ulysses Jr. to Machista. Doesn't quite make it because as he's resting under a tree, a baby attracts a lion. And Machista, he's napping on the beach. He wakes up and he goes and saves the infant by pinning the feline to the ground. But he actually punches this one. So there's some of them that he gets really punchy, which is kind of, I don't like that, but that's what happens. Son of Samson. Okay, we talked about this one on your show a while ago. Mark Forrest is in the forest. And a young pharaoh walks by, and basically a lion attacks both of them. The lion that attacks the young pharaoh, Machista, wrestles him and bludgeoning him with his fist, and then a different lion attacks Machista, and the pharaoh, bing, shoots him with a bow and arrow, and they're like best buds at that point. But again, it's in the wilderness. Machista is just laying there, sunning himself, being a just relaxed and groovy, and, lion happens by. And then finally, Hercules, Samson, and Ulysses. They find themselves shipwrecked in the land of Judea after fighting a sea monster. They're on their way to get some horses and try to get back home. But they're going through like a valley and there's some caves and a lion comes out and everyone's like, ah, lion, they run away. But Hercules is like, you cowards, I'm going to take this guy on. And he goes and wrestles and strangles that lion. So it's a lot of instances of a strong man in a wilderness setting, again, forest, caves and mountains and deserts and whatnot, encountering a large feline of sorts. So what do these scenes do? Well, first, it underscores the strength of the strongman character. I mean, the purpose of the strongman character is they perform these feats of strength, lifting up pillars, taking on 20 men at the same time, swinging a tree around, breaking chains, and getting into brawling matches with large cats, apparently. It's also a strong man versus nature scenario with the lion, tiger, etc., basically representing nature. It basically says whatever obstacles that the natural world can throw at the strongman's strength and heroism will overcome all those. And so, yeah, so those are all kind of instances. Third point, I'm sorry. In all these instances, when the strong man character encounters a feline in the wild, he's also very selfless. Because he's wandering around. He doesn't have to intervene in any of these. The kid could stay trapped at the bottom of the pit. He can keep going. But because the strong man is a heroic character, he puts himself in danger to take the lion on to save, whoever the lion is attacking or coming by with. Even in the original Hercules, with that nefarious evil prince that wants to kill Hercules, Hercules is the bigger man. He puts himself in danger to try to save that character. So it's another opportunity to not just underscore the strong man's strength, but also his, good-naturedness, his selflessness, his heroicness. So that's part one. Part two is the strong man also encounters a large cat in an arena or dungeon or some sort of prison complex. So, usually when a strong man is captured, they're forced to become a gladiator, they're shackled, they're jailed in some capacity. And how do they break out of jail? Well, they'll break their chains, they'll destroy torture devices. I mean, how many of those movies have like some sort of big stone coming down? He's like, oh, holding it up. But sometimes he has to take out the ultimate jailer. And that ultimate jailer just may happen to be a cat. So examples of these include Hercules against the Mongols, Hercules Unchained, Atlas in the Land of Cyclops, and Gladiator 7. So in Hercules against the Mongols, this one has Machista with Mark Forrest. He's in prison and the guards want to get rid of him. So they open up a door and a lion comes in, and Machista actually like grabs a bar from the window and, uses as a cudgel at the lion, but eventually again, as they all end, wrestling around and knocking his wind out. This is another one of those instances where the camera pans away while the lion is lying there, still breathing. So maybe it's okay. I hope it's okay. Hercules Unchained. This has Steve Reeves as his second and final time as Hercules. He's in an arena in this one. He fights 3 tigers, one at a time. These tigers earlier in the film killed their trainer, and the leader of the city is like, Hercules, I'd like to see you fight these tigers. And Hercules is like, no thanks. So of course Hercules winds up fighting the tigers, and he takes out 2 of them. The third one actually gets taken out by a bow and arrow from another Argonaut. But the tigers are actually able to rip off some of Hercules's armor, and Hercules has to fight him back. So it's a very big back and forth sequence, but it's in an arena. It's he's basically for all purposes captured in a confined area. Atlas in the Land of Cyclops, I actually mentioned that earlier. Well, Machista in that one has a second encounter with lions. Towards the halfway point in that movie, he's captured and he's put into a pit to entertain the local evil warlord of sorts. This pit is full of hungry lions, and in this instance, Machista is actually, he's balanced on a pole across the pit with some chains, and on either side is a whole bunch of slaves, and they're all trying to pull him into the pit, and he's trying not to fall into the pit, and you know, it's all very elaborate. But Machista is able to use his strength to like pull the slaves over, but not cause him to fall into the pit, because he's a good guy, except one of them does fall into the pit, but he does rescue him because, again, he's a selfless character. But another instance of a imprisoned strongman character encountering a lion. And then finally, Gladiators 7. This one actually has starts off with a bullfight. This character is captured. Actually, I should back up. Richard Harrison, who's probably my favorite Peplum star. You know, he's assembling a ragtag group of people, and one of them has, you know, been captured. He's put into an arena, and he first has to fight a bull. So it actually echoes a different Hercules myth, but this character actually dodges the bulls, and at the same time, that's when Richard Harrison's like ragtag group of people like start taking out all the guards and everything, and he actually the character gets a spear, and the character's name is Vargas, I'm sorry, by Nazareno Zamperla. He actually kills the bull with a spear, but as soon as he slays that bull, guess what? A lion comes in. And in this case, the guy's like, screw that noise. I'm not fighting a lion after fighting a bull. And he actually does the classic, you know, there's like spear stuck in the wall, and he goes, yup, 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 and flees. But you know, he's still, I consider it besting the lion in this case. Instead of using his, you know, strength, he's using his agility. Anyway, so what do these scenarios accomplish? Well, kind of like encountering a lion in the wild, they're all instances that the strongman can show off their strength. But the big difference here is this is a public encounter. In the wild, encounters are more private affairs, I would say. You know, it's usually one person about to be mauled by a lion, and a Hercules comes and save him. In this instance, the character is truly on spectacle. They're on display. They're in arena. There's people watching them, and we as the audience are part of that spectatorship to watch this character fight lions, tigers, oh my. And I'm going to quote something from the new Peplum, from Kevin Flanagan's essay about, he has an essay on crowd scenes in neo-Peplum, but it's very applicable to old school Peplum. And he says, quote, crowd scenes and the imagination and creative display of crowd formations are also bread and butter to the Peplum genre, often underscoring the most lavish and narrative punctuating moments in the films. And, quote, spectacle antiquity function in many ways, most notably as an organizing principle for gathering people and ideas into consuming entertainment that engage the desires of those in power. Cinema, especially movies that reflexively look back at this period, have complementary functions, end quote. And we can see that in these films where, you know, the warlord or evil king or whoever is overseeing all these events that, you know, event, I should say, that has the strongman fighting the lions and his subjects underneath them. But the idea here is also that the strongman, if he's able to overcome the lions and tigers and panthers, they're also strong enough to overthrow the evil dictator king and so on and so forth. But we see the spectacle, especially in Atlas Land of Cyclops, where Machista is in the center of the pit with the chains and the lions and the slaves. We see it in Hercules Unchained, where Hercules has to fight lion after lion after lion while everyone's going woo down on him. So it's a spectacle instance, and they're also at very climactic scenes, like I mentioned before in Hercules Unchained. You know, he's fighting the critters, and they're ripping off his armor, so it gives that heightened, you know, cinematic. Oh, he could actually lose. I mean, come on, Steve Reeves is not going to lose, but he could lose. Those tigers are ripping off his armor. So anyway, so they're important because they're more spectacle and public scenes. The the character's heroism is not necessarily underscored in these, but his other aspects are, especially to us as the viewers, in the movie. Now, to wrap this all up, there are a couple of exceptions to this, because there's always exceptions to the rule. There are some, believe it or not, sword and sandal films where the strongman doesn't encounter a feline in the wild or in captivity. They're actually best friends. So Ursus in the Valley of the Lions, in that one, Ursus is actually brought up by a pride of lions from his infancy to adulthood. And so this kind of reimagines not just necessarily the Nemean myth, but also a little bit of Romulus and Remus in this one as well. But it still has scenes of Ursus brawling with his lions. Not in combat, but in playfulness. You know, he's like, "Yeah, give me a kiss. You don't want a kiss? All right, we're gonna brawl." I mean, so it's more of sibling fighting, but you take it out of context, it's still a strongman character fighting a lion. And the funny thing is, those scenes of Ursus fighting the lions were reappropriated. They were lifted and shoved into another Peplum film in Thor and the Amazon Women. In that film, the queen has sent out a proclamation, wanting to know all the strong men in her kingdom, and one of her subjects reports back, quote, "Once while returning from a hunt, I saw something incredible. A man with a lair with very high and jagged walls where a family of lions had made their den. The wild beast not only did not attack him as though fearing his strength, but played with him as though he were their friend." And the funny thing is it's a different movie. It's not even the same strongman. The strongman in Thor and the Amazon Women is Thor, played by Joe Robinson. But hey, you're going to lift that stock footage and shove it into something else. So you got two movies there where the character is, not competitive against the lion, tiger, panther, and so on. So eventually the sword and sandal cycle, died in Italy, replaced by spaghetti westerns and Euro spies and so on and so forth. But even later on, movies still dabbled in that Nemean lion myth. Legend of Hercules in 2014, Hercules with the Rock actually recreates the scene. Beastmaster, come on, Beastmaster is totally, Ursus in the Valley of Lions. He's not just with a Black Panther, but he's got a, bird and some ferrets as well. And even Gladiator, even though I don't consider Russell Crowe a strongman character, he is still in the same scenario as, most strongmen are gladiators, but not all gladiators are strongmen. But they're, the Venn diagram overlaps pretty well. But, even in Gladiator, he's fighting tigers in the arena, kind of like the aforementioned examples I gave earlier. So that's really it. I would normally go through a big conclusion wrapping everything up, but I took that out for time purposes. But we all just heard everything anyway. So that's really it. The old school Peplum recreating the Nemean lion myth verbatim. The Hercules wrestling around, sometimes killing lions, sometimes not, sometimes ambiguous. In both public and private spaces, in the wild, in captivity, and they all kind of accomplish a thing to make our heroic strongman character even more heroic. The end.
Thank you very much. That was very deep. I started recently mostly with Michael Del Rusi, talking about some of the psychological and spiritual and social implications of the Peplum films. And what you shared today was very deep. I could add a couple of quick points to it if you'd like.
Go for it.
Okay, the theme of enemy friend with a antagonist and protagonist was displayed in pottery, where Hercules wrestles with old age. So some of the depictions, they look like they're fighting, and then in the other depictions, they look like they're best buds and they're having a great conversation, friendly conversation. So we don't have the stories anymore. We don't know if this is part of the same story, different stories, we don't know, but it's just an example of that. And the starting of the imitating the Hercules myth started in antiquity with Samson.
Mhm.
In the ancient Near East, where there was Grecian and ancient Near Eastern Hebraic influence, there were depictions of a strong guy fighting a lion, and there was argument for many years over whether it was a depiction of Hercules or of Samson, because they didn't know. It could have been both, it could have been neither. The Peplum movies were called Hercules movies for a while, and the number of titles that they have, depending on where their marketing was, they were somebody different. They could be Hercules, Ursus, like you pointed out. They're interchangeable. So that was true in antiquity as well as in the 50s and 60s and to this day.
I know, I think in DeJoyne Baker's essay in here, she points out like a lot of Hercules myths or myths stolen from other, people and put underneath Hercules that, I kind of take it as all fluid. It all counts and it all goes together.
Yes, it does. And we're still arranging and rearranging these tales to this day. We're working on a bunch of projects, and I shared some of them with Michelle. I'll share some of them with you, not now because we don't have the time, but we will communicate. But we're moving in a bunch of different directions. The Manhattan Neighborhood Network cable thing is one thing, and then we're putting together like a school, a very unusual school that will teach very unusual topics. So we will have this conversation soon. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. How can people contact you?
Well, I'm through michellebritney.com, and I also have an author page at Amazon, and you can find me Facebook and Instagram.
And I'm at nickdiak.com. From there's links to all my social media, news and essays and podcast appearances and stuff. It's a nice central hub of all the cool stuff I do.
And you do very many cool things. And I found a new picture that I've been using to promote your podcast. So it's there on Facebook if you'd like to see what
Oh, is it the one of us in front of the Phoenix Pyramid and I haven't had a
Yes.
haircut in 3 years?
That would be
That
the
would be it.
one.
Oh man,
That's the
I
one.
got big fro going on in that one.
And it was really windy that day.
But it looks cool, and it's a very unique and pleasant photograph. So I figured I'd use that for a while. And
Thank you. We have learned that there are 3 pyramids here in Arizona. We visited 2, and we have to go visit the 3rd one here at some point.
so you're in the right place. I'm glad of that. Thank you, O scholars from the edge of time and from the end of time and from time itself. I appreciate all the scholarship and time and energy you put into your presentations today, and I learned a lot. Thank you so very much, and I look forward to our next conversation.
We'll see you next month, sir.
Thank you,
Take care,
Hercules.
sir and ma'am.